I was sitting on a beach in Mexico, first vacation in 3 years, when my phone buzzed. Email from Wallace Bowen, my boss. Subject line, organizational changes. Body, 2 sentences. Your position has been eliminated. Don't come back. Don't come back. I stared at those 3 words for a long time, not because I was sad, but because Wallace had just made a $200 million mistake. My name is Justin Morris. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how my boss fired the sky. Let me back up. I'd been working at Apex Solutions for 4 years, cloud infrastructure engineer, the guy who kept everything running, servers, databases, security protocols, disaster recovery, all of it. If the company was a body, I was the nervous system. Everything ran through me. Wallace Bowen was the CEO, 50-something, expensive suits, golf on Thursdays, the kind of guy who'd walk past you in the hallway without looking up from his phone. To him, I was just another employee, another line item in the budget. But here's the thing about infrastructure work. It's invisible when it works. Nobody notices you. Nobody thanks you. You're just expected to keep the lights on, 24/7, 365 days a year. And I did. For 3 years straight, I didn't take a single vacation day. Not one. I worked weekends, holidays, birthdays. My ex-girlfriend left me because I chose a server migration over her sister's wedding. My mom stopped inviting me to Thanksgiving because I'd spend the whole meal on my laptop. I told myself it was temporary, that once we stabilized the new cloud infrastructure, things would calm down, that Wallace would notice, that there'd be a promotion, a raise, some kind of recognition. There wasn't. Instead, every 6 months, Wallace would send a company-wide email about doing more with less and efficiency gains, which really meant, keep working like this, but don't expect anything extra. Still, I stayed, because I believed in the work, because I'd built something real, because walking away felt like abandoning a part of myself. Then, 3 months ago, something changed. Wallace hired a new CTO, guy named Derek Chen, young, confident, MBA from Stanford. He'd worked at a couple of big tech companies, never as an engineer, always in management. And he had a lot of opinions about how things should run. Derek's first week, he called me into his office. "Justin," he said, leaning back in his chair like we were old friends. "I've been reviewing our cloud architecture. It's dated. The system I'd spent 3 years building, optimizing, securing, dated." "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "We need to modernize, move to a microservices architecture, implement containerization, maybe bring in some outside consultants to audit the whole thing." Outside consultants. Translation: people who'd charge 3 times my salary to tell him what I'd been saying for years. "Sure," I said. "I can put together a proposal." "Great. Have it on my desk by Friday." That was a Tuesday. He wanted a full architectural proposal in 3 days, on top of my regular work, which was already a 60-hour week. I did it. Stayed up 2 nights straight. Put together a comprehensive plan with cost projections, timelines, risk assessments, the whole thing. Derek glanced at it for maybe 5 minutes. "This is too conservative," he said. "We need to move faster. Think bigger." "Bigger how?" "I'm bringing in a team from Cloud Tech Consulting. They're going to help us accelerate the transition." Cloud Tech Consulting. I knew them. Expensive, flashy presentations, and they'd need someone on the inside to actually implement everything they recommended. That someone would be me. Over the next 2 months, I worked with the Cloud Tech team. Long meetings where they'd propose things that sounded good on paper but were nightmares to actually build. I'd explain the technical limitations. They'd nod and write it down. Then they'd propose the same thing again the next week. And through it all, Derek kept pushing. Faster, bigger, more aggressive timelines. "We need to show Wallace we're making progress," he'd say. Progress. While I was working 80-hour weeks, Derek was in meetings, talking about progress. Then, one Friday afternoon, Derek called me into his office again. "Justin, I need you to document everything." "Everything?" "Every system, every process, every password and access key. We're creating a comprehensive knowledge base." Something in my gut shifted. "Why?" "Redundancy. If you get hit by a bus, we need to make sure the company doesn't go down with you." It sounded reasonable. It even sounded smart. But the way he said it, casual, almost rehearsed, made my skin crawl. Still, I did it. Spent 2 weeks writing documentation, system architectures, access protocols, recovery procedures, everything someone would need to replace me. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then, 3 weeks ago, I finally did it. I requested vacation time. Just 1 week. My first time off in 3 years. Derek approved it without even looking up from his laptop. "Sure, man, you've earned it. Take 2 weeks if you want." I should have known then. When someone who's been squeezing every hour out of you suddenly becomes generous, it's not kindness, it's convenience. But I was tired, burned out. I needed to get away. So I booked a flight to Mexico, told myself I'd turn off my phone, actually relax. I made it 4 days. 4 days of sitting on a beach, trying to remember what it felt like to not think about server loads and uptime metrics. Then my phone buzzed. Email from Wallace Bowen. Your position has been eliminated. Don't come back. No phone call, no meeting, no explanation, just 2 sentences and an HR contact for final paperwork. I sat there staring at my phone, listening to the waves crash against the shore. And here's the thing nobody tells you about getting fired. The first emotion isn't sadness. It's not even anger. It's clarity. Suddenly, everything made sense. The documentation request, Derek's questions about system architecture, the way Wallace had been avoiding me for weeks. They'd been planning this, using me to train my own replacement, squeezing out every piece of knowledge I had, then cutting me loose. I looked at that email again. Don't come back. And I thought about something I'd never mentioned to Derek or Wallace or anyone at Apex Solutions. The cloud infrastructure, the entire $200 million operation that kept the company running, was licensed under my personal account, not the company's, mine. See, when I'd first built the system 3 years ago, we were a startup, moving fast. Wallace wanted everything up and running immediately, and he didn't want to wait for corporate accounts and legal approvals. Just use your personal credentials for now, he'd said. We'll transfer everything once we're up and running. We never did. And over 3 years, as the company grew, as we added clients and scaled operations, nobody ever thought to ask who actually owned the licenses. I did. I opened my laptop, logged into the cloud management console, and I looked at all those servers, all those databases, all that infrastructure I'd built from nothing. Then I looked at that email one more time. Don't come back. I took a screenshot, saved it to 3 different places. Then I closed my laptop and ordered another drink, because I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just thinking about that $200 million mistake, and wondering how long it would take them to notice. Ever been pushed around by your own company? Tell me your story. I'm listening. I didn't always want to work in tech. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. Loved the idea of being up there in control, responsible for getting people safely from point A to point B. My dad was an air traffic controller. He'd come home with stories about near misses and perfect landings, and I'd sit there, completely hooked. Then I got to college and realized pilots needed perfect vision. Mine was 20/40. Not terrible, but not good enough. So I pivoted. Computer science. Still problem solving, still systems thinking, just a different kind of cockpit. I graduated in 2013. Economy was rough. Took the first job I could get. Help desk at an insurance company. Spent 2 years resetting passwords and explaining to people that yes, they had to restart their computer. But I learned. Taught myself cloud architecture at night. AWS certifications, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. Read white papers like other people read novels. By 26, I was ready for something real. That's when I found Apex Solutions. They were tiny back then, maybe 15 people. Wallace had started the company 3 years earlier. Some kind of data analytics platform for healthcare providers. Good idea. Terrible execution. Their infrastructure was held together with duct tape and prayer. I interviewed with Wallace in a coffee shop. He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt, talking fast about disrupting the healthcare industry and scaling to 1,000 clients. We need someone who can build us a real system, he said. Something that can grow with us. What's your current setup? I asked. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. A single shared server. No redundancy, no backup system. One coffee spill away from total collapse. We need to move to the cloud, I said. Full migration. Probably takes 6 months if we do it right. Can you do it in 3? I should have said no. Should have walked away right then. But I was 26 and hungry and I wanted to build something that mattered. Yeah, I said. I can do it in 3. He hired me on the spot. $45,000 a year. No benefits. Equity that was probably worthless. I didn't care. I had a blank canvas. The first 3 months were brutal. I was the only infrastructure person, doing the work of 5 engineers, migrating data, setting up security protocols, building disaster recovery systems. I'd work until 2 in the morning, sleep for 4 hours, then do it again. But I loved it. Every night, I'd go home exhausted but satisfied. I was building something real, something elegant. A system that could scale to 1 million users without breaking, and it worked. By month 4, we were fully cloud-based. Uptime went from 70% to 99.9. Client onboarding that used to take 2 weeks now took 2 hours. Wallace was ecstatic. Justin, this is incredible, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. You're a rock star. We couldn't have done this without you. I remember that moment, sitting in our tiny office, looking at those servers humming along perfectly, feeling like I'd actually accomplished something. Wallace bought pizza for the whole team, gave a little speech about how we were going to change healthcare. I believed him. That was 4 years ago. Here's what happened next. Apex grew. Fast. We went from 15 employees to 50, then 100. Wallace raised a Series A, then a Series B. Suddenly we had real money, real clients, real expectations, and I was still the only infrastructure guy. We'll hire more engineers soon, Wallace kept saying. Just need to stabilize revenue first. So I kept working. 60-hour weeks, 70, 80 during crunch times. My salary went up. 50,000, then 60, then 75. But the equity never materialized into anything real, and the promise of a team never happened. Instead, every time I brought it up, Wallace would give me the same speech. Justin, you're so good at this. Why would I bring in someone else and risk messing up what you've built? You're irreplaceable, man. Irreplaceable. I held onto that word like a lifeline. Looking back now, sitting on that beach in Mexico with a termination email on my phone, I can see how stupid that was. Because here's what irreplaceable really meant. I was too useful to promote and too expensive to keep forever. But back then, I didn't see it. I just kept building. Year 2, we added machine learning capabilities. I architected the whole data pipeline, nights and weekends, no extra pay. Year 3, we landed our biggest client, a hospital network worth $50 million annually. Their requirement? Absolute uptime. No downtime. Ever. I built that system. Redundancy on top of redundancy. Multiple data centers. Automatic failovers. The kind of architecture that costs millions to maintain. And I did it all under my personal cloud account. Not because I was trying to be sneaky, just because that's how we'd started, and nobody ever told me to change it. See, when you're small and moving fast, corners get cut. You use personal credit cards for business expenses. You register domains under your own name. You set up services with whatever account is convenient. The plan is always, we'll clean this up later. We'll formalize everything once we're stable. But later never comes. You just keep building on top of that shaky foundation, and after a while, it's too complicated to untangle. That's what happened with the cloud infrastructure. Year 1, I'd set everything up using my personal AWS account because Wallace didn't want to wait for corporate approval. Just get it running, he'd said. We'll move it to a company account next quarter. Next quarter came and went. Nobody mentioned it, so I didn't either. By year 2, we had so many systems interconnected that moving everything would have required weeks of downtime, and Wallace's #1 rule was, never go down. So it stayed under my name, my credentials, my billing, my administrative access. I'd mention it occasionally in meetings. Hey, we should probably migrate this to a corporate account. Yeah, Wallace would say. Add it to the roadmap. It never made it past nice to have. And honestly, part of me liked it that way. It felt like ownership, like I'd built something that was actually mine, even if I was building it for someone else. That's the trap right there. The golden handcuffs aren't always money. Sometimes they're pride. The belief that you're the only one who can do this, that walking away would mean letting something you built fall apart. So you stay, and you work, and you tell yourself it'll get better. It doesn't. Year 3, Wallace hired a CFO named Richard. Sharp guy, MIT grad. First thing he did was audit all our expenses. He called me into his office 2 weeks in. Justin, I'm looking at our cloud costs. We're spending about $40,000 a month, but I can't find any corporate contracts. Where are we paying this from? My stomach dropped. It's, running through my personal account. We set it up that way initially for speed. Richard frowned. Your personal account? For a multi-million-dollar infrastructure? Yeah, I know. We've been meaning to migrate it. How long has it been like this? About 3 years. He stared at me. Then he laughed. Not a mean laugh. More like disbelief. Jesus, Justin. You know that's insane, right? What happens if you leave? What happens if something happens to you? Nothing's going to happen to me. That's not the point. This is a massive liability. He pulled out a notepad. Okay, we need to fix this. I'll talk to Wallace. We'll get a proper corporate account set up, transfer everything over. Should take, what, a couple months? Probably. We'd need to coordinate with all our clients, schedule maintenance windows. Do it. High priority. I'll make sure Wallace approves the resources. I walked out of that meeting feeling weirdly exposed, like someone had finally noticed the thing I'd been quietly worrying about for years, but also relieved. Finally, we were going to do this right, except we didn't. 2 weeks later, Richard left, found a better job at a bigger company, and with him went any momentum on fixing the infrastructure ownership issue. Wallace never brought it up again. Neither did I. Looking back, I can see exactly when things started to go wrong. It wasn't one big moment. It was 1,000 small moments. 1,000 times I should have spoken up, pushed back, demanded better. But I didn't. Because I thought I was part of something. Because I believed Wallace when he said I was irreplaceable. Because I'd built something I was proud of, and I couldn't imagine walking away from it. That's the thing about building something with your own hands. It becomes personal, even when it's for someone else. Even when they don't appreciate it, you can't just let it go. But here's what I learned sitting on that beach staring at that termination email. They can let you go. Easy. 2 sentences in an email. And all that loyalty, all those 80-hour weeks, all those times you chose work over everything else, none of it matters. Because to them, you were never irreplaceable. You were just convenient. I closed my laptop and walked down to the water, let the waves crash over my feet, watched the sun start to set, and I thought about that cloud infrastructure, $200 million in operations, running on my personal account, with my credentials, my access, my control. I thought about Wallace sitting in his office, probably already interviewing my replacement, probably planning how to spin this to the board. We're optimizing headcount, or some corporate bullshit like that. I thought about Derek, the new CTO, confident that he'd extracted everything he needed from me, that the documentation I'd written would be enough. And I smiled, because they'd forgotten something important. You can document a system. You can write down processes and procedures and passwords. But the one thing you can't document is ownership. And I still owned the sky. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments. The first real crack happened 6 months before Mexico. I was in the server room. We still had one small on-premise setup for legacy systems when I got a calendar invite. All-hands meeting, mandatory attendance. Wallace loved all-hands meetings. They were his chance to play inspiring CEO. Talk about vision and growth and the Apex family. I grabbed my coffee and headed to the main conference room. Everyone was already there. 50-some employees packed in, buzzing with that nervous energy that comes before big announcements. Wallace stood at the front, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Morning, everyone. I've got some exciting news. As you know, we've been scaling rapidly. Our client base has tripled in the last year. Revenue is up 200%. We're on track to break $100 million in ARR by next quarter. Polite applause. Wallace ate it up. But with growth comes challenges. We need leadership that can take us to the next level. So I'm thrilled to announce that we've brought in a world-class CTO to help us scale our technology organization. My coffee suddenly tasted like metal. A CTO. We'd never had a CTO before. Wallace had always just managed things. Badly, but still. Please welcome Derek Chen. Derek comes to us from TechCorp, where he led a team of over 200 engineers. Before that, he was at Microsoft and Google, Stanford MBA. Exactly the kind of leader we need for this next phase. Derek stepped forward. Early 30s, expensive watch, that Silicon Valley uniform, jeans, white sneaker, and a blazer that probably cost more than my rent. He smiled. Perfect teeth. Thanks, Wallace. I'm excited to be here. Apex has built something really special, and I can't wait to help take it to the next level. Over the next few weeks, I'll be meeting with each of you to understand what you're working on and how we can optimize our operations. My door is always open. More applause. Wallace beamed like a proud parent. I sat there, doing the math in my head. Derek's salary was probably 3 times mine, maybe 4, and we just hired him to manage an engineering team that consisted of me and 2 junior developers who mostly worked on front-end stuff. After the meeting, people clustered around Derek, introducing themselves. I hung back, finishing my coffee. Wallace caught my eye and waved me over. Justin, come meet Derek. I walked over, shook Derek's hand. Justin Morris, I said. Infrastructure. Ah, the infrastructure guy. Derek's smile widened. Wallace has told me a lot about you. Says you're the one who keeps the lights on. Something like that. I'd love to sit down with you this week. Get a full download on our systems. Architecture diagrams, tech stack, roadmap, everything. Sure, I can put something together. Great. How's Thursday? Say, 2 o'clock? I checked my mental calendar. Thursday I was supposed to be doing a critical security patch. But you don't say no to the new CTO on day 1. Thursday works. Perfect. He clapped me on the shoulder. Looking forward to it, man. Man. He kept calling everyone man, like we were all buddies. Like he hadn't just been brought in making probably $200,000 a year to manage 3 people. I went back to my desk and opened my calendar. Thursday, 2 o'clock. Derek Chen, infrastructure overview. Then I opened my task list, security patch, database optimization, client onboarding, system monitoring. About 60 hours of work scheduled for a 40-hour week. I added another line. Prepare presentation for new CTO, who doesn't know what I actually do. That Thursday, I showed up to Derek's office with my laptop and 3 years of architectural documentation. His office was on the executive floor, glass walls, standing desk. One of those ergonomic chairs that cost more than my car payment. Justin, come in. Want some coffee? Water? I'm good. Cool. So, walk me through everything. I want to understand the full stack. I opened my laptop and pulled up the architecture diagram. A beautiful, complex web of services, databases, security layers, and redundancy systems. Okay, so we're running a hybrid cloud architecture. Primary infrastructure is on AWS. We've got multiple availability zones for redundancy. Auto-scaling configured based on load. Our database layer uses PostgreSQL with read replicas across 3 regions. Hold on, Derek said, raising a hand. Let's zoom out. Big picture. What's our monthly cloud spend? About $40,000. That includes compute, storage, bandwidth, and all our various services. He frowned. That seems high for our scale. It's actually pretty efficient. We're handling about 2 million transactions a day with 99.99% uptime. Most companies our size are spending twice that. Interesting. He made a note on his tablet. And what's our disaster recovery plan? Full redundancy. If our primary region goes down, we can fail over to our backup in under 5 minutes. We've got automated backups every 6 hours, retention for 30 days. Have you tested it? Every quarter. Last test was 3 weeks ago. Failover worked perfectly. Derek nodded, but something about his expression bothered me. Like he was listening, but not really hearing. Like he'd already made up his mind about something. What about our tech debt? He asked. What about it? How much are we carrying? What needs to be modernized? I thought about that. Depends on how you define tech debt. The core systems are solid, built for scale, but there are some legacy integrations from our early days that could use refactoring. Give me a percentage. If you had to guess, what percentage of our code base is legacy or outdated? This was a trap. I could feel it. Maybe 20%, I said carefully. But those systems work. They're stable. Refactoring them would be expensive and risky. Another note. And what about containerization? Are we using Kubernetes? No. We're using traditional VMs with some containerization for specific services. But full Kubernetes deployment doesn't make sense for our scale yet. Why not? Complexity. Kubernetes is powerful, but it adds significant operational overhead. For our current needs, we get better reliability and easier maintenance with our current setup. Derek leaned back in his chair. I hear you, but here's the thing, Justin. We're not building for today. We're building for tomorrow. In 2 years, we want to be at 500 million in revenue, 1,000 employees, serving major hospital networks across the country. Okay. To get there, we need to modernize. We need to be running on cutting-edge infrastructure. Kubernetes, microservices, serverless where appropriate, the whole 9 yards. I took a breath. That's a complete re-architecture. It would take months, maybe a year. And during that transition, we'd be vulnerable, higher risk of outages. I understand, but it's necessary. We can't scale on legacy architecture. Legacy. My 3-year-old system that had never gone down, that handled millions of transactions flawlessly. Legacy. Look, Derek continued, I'm not criticizing what you've built. It's solid work. But we're entering a new phase. We need enterprise-grade infrastructure, the kind that can handle hypergrowth. Enterprise-grade. Another buzzword. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. I'm bringing in some consultants, Cloud Tech Consulting. They specialize in cloud transformation. They'll audit our current setup, identify gaps, and help us build a roadmap for modernization. Consultants, of course. When are they starting? Next week. I'll need you to give them full access. Documentation, credentials, architecture diagrams, everything. They'll need to do a deep dive, full access, to systems I'd spent 3 years securing. Derek, with all due respect, giving outside consultants admin access to production systems is a massive security risk. They're not outside consultants. They're partners. Cloud Tech has worked with Fortune 500 companies. They know what they're doing. I'm sure they do. But our systems handle protected health information. HIPAA compliance requires we limit access to Justin. Derek's voice was still friendly, but there was an edge now. I appreciate your diligence on security. Really? But this is a business decision. Wallace has signed off on it. The board supports it. It's happening. I sat there staring at my laptop screen, at the architecture I'd built, the system that had never failed, and I realized something. This wasn't about modernization. This wasn't about scaling. This was about replacing me. Not immediately, not obviously, but gradually, bring in consultants, document everything, extract all my knowledge. Then, once they understood the systems well enough, they wouldn't need me anymore. Understood, I said. I'll prepare the documentation. Thanks, man. I knew you'd be on board. He stood up, extending his hand. We're going to do great things together. I shook his hand and left. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop. The cloud tech consultants started the following Monday. There were 3 of them, all younger than me, fresh out of consulting boot camp, armed with slide decks and buzzwords. They scheduled daily meetings, just to sync up, which really meant, explain everything you do so we can write it down and eventually do it without you. Walk us through your deployment process. Explain your monitoring setup. How do you handle security patches? What's your incident response procedure? Every question was a small extraction. Every answer went into their documentation. And Derek was always in the background, nodding along, taking notes. After 2 weeks, they presented their findings. I sat in the conference room, watching them click through their slide deck. Current state assessment, adequate but not scalable. Recommendation, complete infrastructure overhaul. Estimated timeline, 6 to 9 months. Estimated cost, $1.5 million. $1.5 million. To rebuild systems that were working perfectly. Wallace loved it. This is exactly what we need, he said. Let's move forward. Derek looked at me. Justin, you'll be the technical lead on this, of course, working closely with the cloud tech team. Technical lead, translation, do all the actual work while they take credit. But I smiled and said, sure, happy to help. Because what else could I say? Over the next 3 months, I worked with the cloud tech team, 80-hour weeks, nights and weekends, migrating systems, implementing their recommendations, fixing their mistakes. And there were a lot of mistakes. Consultants are great at making slide decks, not so great at understanding the actual constraints of production systems. But slowly, methodically, we rebuilt everything. And through it all, Derek kept asking for more documentation. Can you write up a runbook for this? Can you document your backup procedures? Can you create a training manual for the new hires? New hires. That was the giveaway. What new hires? I asked. Oh, we're building out the team. Bringing in some junior engineers. They'll need to ramp up on your systems. My systems. That were about to become their systems. But I kept documenting, kept training, kept working, because I still believed. Or maybe I was just too tired to see what was happening. Then, 3 weeks ago, I finally asked for vacation time. Just 1 week. My first in 3 years. Derek approved it immediately. Didn't even hesitate. Of course, man. Take 2 weeks if you want. You've earned it. That should have been my warning. When someone who's been grinding you into dust suddenly becomes generous, it's not kindness. It's convenience. They didn't need me anymore. All my knowledge was documented. All my processes were recorded. All my systems were understood. I'd spent 3 months training my own replacement, and I was too burned out to see it. So I booked that flight to Mexico. Told myself I'd earned a break. 4 days later, I got that email. Your position has been eliminated. Don't come back. And sitting there on that beach, I finally understood. The cloud tech consultants weren't there to help me. They were there to replace me. Derek wasn't brought in to lead me. He was brought in to manage my exit. And Wallace? Wallace hadn't protected me. He'd discarded me. I opened my laptop, logged into the cloud console. All those servers, all those databases, all running smoothly, all licensed under my personal account. I took a long sip of my drink and thought about something Derek had said in that first meeting. We're building for tomorrow. Yeah, me too. What would you have done in my place? Be honest. I didn't respond to Wallace's email right away. Part of me wanted to. Wanted to fire back something angry, something that would make him understand what he'd just done. But I'd learned a long time ago. Angry emails never help. They just give people ammunition. So I sat there on that beach, phone in hand, and I did nothing. My phone buzzed again. HR this time. Jennifer Kowalski. Justin, I'm so sorry to reach out while you're on vacation. Wallace asked me to coordinate your offboarding. Could you give me a call when you have a moment? We need to discuss final paycheck, benefits, equipment return, etc. Equipment return. My laptop, my badge. The phone they'd issued me 3 years ago that I'd answered at 2 in the morning more times than I could count. I typed back, I'll call you Monday when I'm back in town. Professional, calm, cooperative. Jennifer responded immediately. Thank you. Again, I'm very sorry about this. She probably was sorry. Jennifer was decent. She'd fought to get me a raise last year when Wallace was being cheap. This wasn't her decision, but sorry doesn't change anything. I put my phone down and ordered another drink. Tried to enjoy the sunset. Tried to pretend my brain wasn't already spinning through a dozen different scenarios. The truth was, I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet. The rational part of me, The part that had studied systems and logic for a decade knew I had leverage, real leverage. The entire company infrastructure ran on my personal account. They couldn't access it without me. But the other part of me, the part that had been raised to play by the rules, to be professional, to not burn bridges, that part was screaming at me to just let it go. Take the severance, move on, find a better job. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about revenge. It costs something. Even when you're right, even when they deserve it, there's always a cost. I finished my vacation, spent the next 3 days on that beach, thinking. By the time I flew back to California, I'd made a decision. I was going to play along, for now, return the equipment, sign the severance paperwork, act like a professional who'd been let go and was handling it with dignity. And while I was doing all that, I'd figure out exactly what I wanted to do with the keys to the kingdom I still held. Monday morning, I drove to the Apex office for the last time. The security guard at the front desk looked uncomfortable when I walked in. "Hey, Justin. I, heard. That sucks, man." "Yeah, thanks, Marcus. Need me to call someone to escort you?" That stung. 4 years I'd been walking into this building. 4 years of late nights and weekend emergencies. And now I needed an escort. "Jennifer's expecting me," I said. He nodded and waved me through. The office was busy. Monday morning energy. People at their desks, coffee in hand, talking about their weekends. A few of them glanced at me as I walked by. Some looked away quickly. Others gave sympathetic nods. Everyone knew. Of course everyone knew. Small companies are like small towns. News travels fast. Jennifer was waiting in the HR office. She stood up when I came in, genuine concern on her face. "Justin, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I lied. "Let's just get through the paperwork." She pulled out a folder. "Okay, so your final paycheck will include your regular salary through Friday, plus accrued vacation time. That's about 3 weeks worth. You'll also receive 2 months of severance pay. 2 months. For 4 years of work." "What about equity?" I asked. She looked uncomfortable. "You'll need to exercise your options within 90 days, per the terms of your agreement. But I should tell you, the strike price is pretty close to the current valuation, so there's not much value there right now." Translation: the equity was worthless. 4 years of grinding, and the stock options they'd dangled as part of my compensation were worth nothing. "Got it," I said. "We'll need your laptop, phone, and badge. I have boxes for the laptop and phone if you want to pack them up." I pulled my laptop out of my bag. The same laptop I'd used to build everything, to work until 3 in the morning, to respond to emergencies on Christmas Eve. I set it on the table. "There's personal stuff on here," I said. "Photos, documents. Can I transfer those first?" "Of course, take your time." I opened the laptop and started copying files to a USB drive. Photos from company events, back when I still went to company events, old performance reviews, some personal code projects I'd worked on during lunch breaks. And while I was doing that, I opened a terminal window, minimized it so Jennifer couldn't see. I checked something, just one quick command, confirming what I already knew. My AWS credentials were still active. My personal account still owned all the infrastructure. They hadn't changed anything, hadn't even thought to ask. I copied the rest of my files, then closed the laptop and handed it over. "Phone?" Jennifer asked. I powered it down and gave it to her, along with my badge. 4 years of my life, handed back in a cardboard box. "Is there anything else?" I asked. "Just the exit paperwork. Non-disclosure agreement, non-compete, non-disparagement clause, standard stuff. If you could sign here, here, and here." I read through it carefully. The non-compete was brutal. 12 months. Couldn't work for any competitor or any company in the healthcare data space. Basically, we're firing you, and also you can't work anywhere else in your field for a year. "This is pretty aggressive," I said. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. "I know, I'm sorry." Legal insisted. "What if I don't sign? Then you don't get the severance." 2 months of salary versus 12 months of career restrictions. They had me cornered, or so they thought. I signed. "Is Wallace available?" I asked. "I'd like to say goodbye." Jennifer looked surprised. "Oh, let me check." She picked up her phone, made a quick call. "He's in a meeting," she said, "but he said he can meet you in his office in 10 minutes. I'll wait." I sat there in the HR office, thinking about what I was going to say, how I was going to play this. Because here's what I'd learned over the past few days. People underestimate you when you're polite, when you're professional, when you don't make a scene. They think compliance means acceptance, that signing papers means you've moved on. They forget that the quietest people are often the ones paying the most attention. 10 minutes later, Jennifer walked me to Wallace's office. He was sitting behind his big desk looking at his computer. Didn't even look up when I came in. "Justin, thanks for coming by." "Thanks for coming by. like I'd stopped in to chat, not to clean out my desk after being fired via email. I wanted to say goodbye, I said, and thank you. Now he looked up, surprised. Thank you? Yeah, 4 years here taught me a lot. About building systems, about scaling infrastructure, about business. He relaxed a little. You did great work, Justin. Really. This isn't personal. We're just moving in a different direction. Different direction. Corporate speak for, we found someone cheaper. I understand, I said. I hope everything goes well with the new infrastructure team. I'm sure it will. Derek's got a solid plan. He does. The cloud tech consultants are good, smart people. Wallace nodded, clearly relieved that I wasn't making this difficult. So, what's next for you? He asked. Not sure yet. Going to take some time. Decompress. Maybe do some consulting work. Good, good. Well, if you need a reference, just let me know. A reference, after firing me by email. The audacity was almost impressive. I appreciate that, I said. One more thing. Yeah? The cloud infrastructure. The AWS account. It's still under my personal credentials. Should I transfer admin access to Derek before I leave? I watched his face carefully, watched for any sign that he understood what I was really saying. Nothing. Just a casual wave of his hand. Oh, Derek's got all the documentation, right? He can handle it. You sure? It's pretty involved. Lots of security layers, access controls. Might be easier if I walk him through it. Nah, we're good. Don't want to take up any more of your time. You've done enough. You've done enough. I stood up, extended my hand. Thanks again, Wallace. Good luck with everything. He shook my hand, smiled. You too, Justin. Stay in touch. I wouldn't. I walked out of his office, through the main workspace, past the desks where I'd spent 4 years of my life. A couple people stopped me on the way out. Hey man, sorry about what happened. You were the best, Justin. We're going to miss you. Let me know if you need anything. Reference? Whatever. I thanked them all, acted gracious, professional. And the whole time I was thinking about that conversation with Wallace. He didn't know. Derek didn't know. Nobody knew. They thought the documentation was enough. Thought that because I'd written down all the passwords and procedures, they could just take over. They didn't understand the difference between documentation and ownership. I walked to my car, an old Honda Civic I'd been driving since college. Needed new tires. Probably needed a lot of things, but it ran, and it was paid off, and that was what mattered. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, looking back at the building. 4 years, 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, lost relationships, all for a company that fired me via email. I pulled out my personal phone, not the work phone I'd just returned, and opened the AWS app. All those servers, all that infrastructure, all running smoothly on my account. I could see everything: system health, traffic patterns, current load, $200 million in annual operations, all depending on systems I still controlled. I didn't do anything, not yet. I just wanted to see it, to confirm it was still there, still mine. Then I drove home. My apartment was quiet, small, 1-bedroom in Mountain View. $1,500 a month, which was cheap for the area, which meant it was basically a closet. I'd been planning to move somewhere nicer once I got that promotion Wallace kept promising, the one that never came. Now I was glad I'd stayed, because 2 months of severance doesn't go far in the Bay Area. I made coffee and sat down at my personal laptop, the nice one I'd bought with my own money, not company equipment, and I started researching employment law, wrongful termination, breach of contract, non-compete agreements. How enforceable were they really? Intellectual property. Who owned infrastructure built with personal accounts? I read for hours, taking notes, building a picture. Here's what I learned. I probably didn't have a wrongful termination case. California is at-will employment. They can fire you for any reason that's not explicitly illegal. The non-compete was probably unenforceable. California courts don't like non-competes, but fighting it would cost legal fees I didn't have. But the infrastructure ownership? That was interesting, because technically, legally, I owned those cloud accounts. They were registered to me, billed to my credit card, which the company reimbursed, but still, my name, my credentials, my account. The company had paid for the services, but they didn't own the account itself. It was a gray area, the kind of thing that happens when startups move fast and cut corners, and now it was my leverage. I spent the next week being the perfect ex-employee, responded to HR emails promptly, answered questions from the team about system documentation, even helped one of the junior developers troubleshoot an issue via email. Professional, helpful, cooperative. And the whole time I was watching, monitoring the infrastructure from my personal account, seeing what they were doing, how they were managing things without me. They were doing fine. The systems I'd built were solid. They didn't need much maintenance. But they also weren't making any changes, weren't deploying updates, weren't touching anything critical, because they were scared of breaking something they didn't fully understand. That's when I got an email from Derek. Hey Justin, hope you're doing well. Quick question. We're trying to adjust some of the auto-scaling parameters, but we're getting permission errors. Could you send over your AWS credentials so we can make the changes? Thanks, man. I stared at that email for a long time. This was it. The moment where I had to decide. I could send them the credentials, be helpful one last time, walk away clean, or I could do something else. I thought about Wallace's face when I'd offered to transfer the access, how casually he dismissed it. I thought about Derek's condescending tone in every meeting. Man this, man that, like we were buddies while he was systematically replacing me. I thought about 4 years of my life, 4 years of 80-hour weeks and missed holidays and sacrificed relationships, for 2 months of severance and a non-compete that tried to blacklist me from my own industry. I wrote back, "Hey Derek, I understand you need access to make changes. However, those accounts are registered under my personal information, and I'm no longer employed by Apex. I'd recommend setting up new corporate AWS accounts and migrating the infrastructure. I'd be happy to consult on that process at my standard consulting rate of $300 per hour. Let me know if you'd like to discuss." Best, Justin, professional, reasonable, and completely devastating, because migrating that infrastructure would take months, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and require downtime they couldn't afford. I hit send and waited. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments. Derek's response came 6 hours later. Justin, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The AWS infrastructure was built for Apex Solutions. While it may be under your personal account, the company paid for it. We need access to continue operations. This is urgent. Please send credentials ASAP. Urgent. I read that word 3 times. 4 years I'd responded to urgent messages at 2 in the morning, on weekends, during dinner with my family, every single time, no matter what I was doing. Now they wanted urgent from me? I wrote back, Derek, I understand the situation. However, the accounts are legally registered to me personally. I'm happy to help facilitate a proper transition, but that will require a formal consulting agreement. My attorney can send over a standard contract if that helps. Otherwise, I'd recommend you start setting up corporate accounts immediately. The migration will take some time, so the sooner you begin, the better. My attorney. I didn't have an attorney, but he didn't know that. I hit send and went for a run. When I got back, there were 4 missed calls from Derek, 3 from Jennifer in HR, and 2 from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored all of them and took a shower. By the time I was dressed, there was an email from Wallace. Justin, we need to talk. Please call me immediately. This is important. Important, not urgent. He was trying to sound authoritative, but I could smell the panic. I waited 2 hours before I called back. Wallace picked up on the first ring. Justin, thanks for calling back. No problem. What's up? We have a situation. Derek tells me there's some confusion about the AWS account access. No confusion on my end. The accounts are registered to me personally. They always have been. I mentioned this multiple times over the years, but nobody seemed concerned about it. Silence on the other end. I could almost hear his brain working, trying to figure out how to handle this. Right, he finally said. But you built that infrastructure for the company, using company resources, during company time. I built it using my personal AWS account because you told me to. Remember? Year 1. Just get it running. We'll formalize it later. We never did. Justin, come on. Don't be difficult about this. We can work something out. I'm not being difficult. I'm being accurate. The account is mine. The infrastructure runs on it. If you want to continue using it, we can discuss terms. If you want to migrate to your own accounts, I can consult on that process. Either way, I need something formal in writing. You signed an NDA and a non-compete. Everything you built belongs to the company. There it was. The threat. The NDA covers confidential information, which I haven't disclosed. The non-compete prevents me from working for competitors, which I'm not doing. Neither of those agreements transfer ownership of my personal property. Your personal property? Justin, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You fired me via email, during my vacation, after 4 years, with 2 months of severance and a non-compete that basically blacklists me from my industry. Now you want me to hand over access to infrastructure worth millions of dollars, for free. That doesn't sound reasonable to me. Another long silence. What do you want? Wallace asked. Good question. What did I want? Money? Sure, but this was bigger than money. I want a fair consulting contract, I said. Market rate, $300 per hour, minimum 20 hours. And a mutual release from the non-compete agreement. $300 an hour? That's ridiculous. That's standard for senior infrastructure consultants in the Bay Area. Check if you want. I'll wait. I could hear him breathing on the other end, calculating, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I need to discuss this with legal, he said finally. Take your time. My credentials aren't going anywhere. Justin, we have clients depending on this infrastructure. You can't just... I'm not doing anything. The systems are running fine. I haven't touched anything. I'm simply declining to give you access to my personal accounts without a formal agreement. That's completely legal. This is extortion. No, this is business. You taught me that, remember? Nothing personal, just moving in a different direction. Same thing. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. 4 years of playing nice. 4 years of being the reliable guy who never pushed back. 4 years of accepting whatever they offered, because I was grateful for the opportunity. Done with that. I sat down at my laptop and opened my personal AWS console. Checked the logs. Someone had tried to access the admin panel 20 minutes ago. Failed login. They were trying to guess my credentials. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. Changed my password to something 40 characters long, randomly generated. Set up alerts for any login attempts. Then I downloaded a complete backup of all the infrastructure documentation, every architecture diagram, every configuration file, every deployment script. Not because I was going to do anything malicious, just because I wanted a record, evidence of what I'd built, what I owned. My phone rang. Jennifer from HR. Justin, hi. I know this is awkward, but Wallace asked me to reach out. We'd really like to resolve this situation amicably. I'm being completely amicable, Jennifer. I'm offering to consult at market rate. That's very amicable. He thinks 300 per hour is too high. Then he can check the market. Senior infrastructure consultants in the Bay Area charge $250 to $400 per hour. I'm in the middle of that range. And given the urgency of the situation, I'm being generous. What about the non-compete? Wallace is concerned about releasing you from that. Then I guess he has a decision to make. He can keep the non-compete and figure out the infrastructure on his own, or he can release me and get my help. Can't have both. Justin, please, I'm just trying to help. I softened a little. I know, Jennifer, and I appreciate it, but this isn't negotiable. I spent 4 years being flexible, being accommodating, taking less than I was worth because I believed in the mission. Then I got fired via email. So now we're doing things formally, with contracts, at market rates. That's as amicable as it gets. She sighed. I'll let Wallace know. Thanks. And Jennifer, for what it's worth, I know this isn't your fault. You've always been fair to me. Thanks, Justin. That means a lot. After we hung up, I made myself dinner. Pasta. Nothing fancy. Ate it standing at my kitchen counter, scrolling through LinkedIn. People from Apex had already started reaching out. Hey man, heard what happened. That sucks. Let me know if you need anything. Justin, you were the backbone of that company. Their loss. If you're looking for work, I might have something. DM me. I appreciated the support, but I also knew how this worked. Tech was a small world. Word traveled fast. By now, everyone in the Bay Area infrastructure scene probably knew I'd been let go from Apex. Some would assume it was performance issues. Some would hear the real story. Most wouldn't care either way. That's the thing about reputation in tech. It's built over years and destroyed in days, unless you have leverage. The next morning, I got an email from a law firm, Richards & Associates. Mr. Morris, we represent Apex Solutions, Inc., regarding the AWS infrastructure currently registered under your personal account. We request that you immediately transfer all credentials and access rights to Apex Solutions. Failure to comply may result in legal action for breach of contract, theft of corporate property, and intentional interference with business operations. I read it 3 times. Theft of corporate property, for refusing to hand over my own account. I forwarded it to a friend from college, Mike Patterson. He'd gone to law school instead of staying in tech. Now he did employment law in San Francisco. He called me 20 minutes later. Justin, what the hell did you do? Got fired. Declined to give them my personal AWS credentials for free. And they lawyered up, apparently. Okay, don't respond to this email. Don't send them anything. Don't talk to anyone at the company without talking to me first. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Yeah, what are we looking at? Honestly, they don't have much. You own the account. It's registered to you. They paid for the services, but they don't own the account itself. It's a gray area that happens when companies move fast and cut corners. But here's the thing. They have deeper pockets than you. They can drag this out, make it expensive, make it painful. So what do? We negotiate, get everything in writing, and we make sure you're protected. How much is this going to cost me? For a friend? Let's call it a flat $5,000 for the initial consultation and contract negotiation. If it goes to litigation, we'll talk, but I don't think it will. They're posturing. $5,000, half of 1 month's severance. Do it, I said. That afternoon, I checked the AWS console again. The infrastructure was running fine. No issues. But the access logs showed something interesting. Someone was running queries, lots of them, trying to map out the architecture from the inside, trying to understand how everything connected. Derek had to be, or one of his cloud tech consultants. They were trying to figure out how to rebuild it without me. Good luck with that. See, here's what they didn't understand. Infrastructure isn't just about knowing how things connect. It's about understanding why they connect that way. The decisions that got made at 2 in the morning during an outage. The workarounds for vendor limitations. The optimizations that aren't in any documentation because they're based on intuition and experience. You can't reverse engineer intuition. I made myself a drink and opened my laptop. Started going through the system piece by piece, documenting, really documenting, all the little details that weren't in the official docs. The tribal knowledge, the things you only learn by building something from scratch. Not because I was planning to hold it hostage, but because I wanted to know exactly what I had, exactly what leverage I was sitting on. My phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Justin, this is Derek. We need to talk. Off the record. Can we meet for coffee? Off the record. Interesting. I wrote back. My attorney has advised me not to have any direct communication with Apex personnel. All communication should go through him. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I'm not trying to screw you, I just want to understand the situation. Then have your legal team contact mine. We can arrange a formal mediation. Come on, man. We can work this out like professionals. Professionals. Like firing someone via email was professional. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my personal calendar and started mapping out the next few weeks. Job applications, networking calls, interviews. Because here's the reality. I could fight with Apex, could drag this out, could maybe even win. But winning a legal battle doesn't pay rent. I needed a new job, and fast. The problem was the non-compete. 12 months. Any company in healthcare data was off limits, which meant most of the companies that would want someone with my skills, unless I got that release. My phone rang. Mike Patterson. They responded, he said, through their lawyers. They're offering $25,000 for a full transfer of access. No release from the non-compete. $25,000. About 4 months of salary. For infrastructure worth millions. That's insulting, I said. I agree, but it's a starting point. They're also threatening to sue for damages if you don't comply. Claims you're holding their systems hostage. I'm not holding anything hostage. The systems are running fine. I know. But they're arguing you have a duty to transfer access as part of your employment obligations, even though they fired me. They're saying your employment agreement included a clause about company property, and they're claiming the infrastructure counts as company property. Does it? Mike was quiet for a moment. Honestly? It's arguable. You built it on company time, they paid for it, but it's registered to you personally. A court could go either way. So what do you recommend? I recommend we counter-offer. $50,000. Full release from the non-compete. And they cover your legal fees. We frame it as a consulting agreement for knowledge transfer, not a purchase of property. That way, everyone saves face. $50,000. About 8 months of salary. Enough to get me through the non-compete period if they wouldn't release me from it. And if they say no, then we see how badly they actually need that access. My guess? They need it a lot more than they're letting on. Otherwise, they wouldn't have lawyered up this fast. He was right. The aggressive legal response wasn't confidence. It was panic. They'd realized they didn't actually control their own infrastructure. And that realization was probably keeping Wallace up at night. Okay, I said. Send the counteroffer. Will do. And Justin, don't check those systems. Don't log in. Don't touch anything. If this goes to court, we need to show you weren't interfering with their operations. Got it. After we hung up, I stared at my laptop. Don't log in. Don't touch anything. But I could still see the access logs. Could still see what they were doing. And what I saw made me smile. Because they were panicking. Running the same queries over and over. Trying to map dependencies. Trying to figure out what would break if they tried to migrate. They were realizing what I'd known all along. The system wasn't just code and servers. It was 4 years of decisions, 4 years of optimizations, 4 years of knowledge that couldn't be documented. It was mine, and they were going to pay for it, one way or another. What would you have done in my place? Be honest. The counteroffer went out Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Mike. They rejected it. What did they say? $25,000, final offer. No release from the non-compete. And they want an answer by end of business today or they're filing suit. I laughed. Couldn't help it. They're bluffing, I said. Maybe, but Justin, Litigation is expensive and slow. Even if you win, it'll cost you more than $25,000 in legal fees. So they're betting I'll fold. Essentially, yes. I sat there, thinking. They were treating this like a negotiation. Like I was some junior employee who could be pressured into accepting whatever they offered. They still didn't get it. Mike, can you send me copies of everything? The original employment agreement, the severance paperwork, the NDA, all of it. Sure, why? I want to read them again, carefully. He sent them over within an hour. I spent the rest of the afternoon going through every document, every clause, every signature, and that's when I found it. Buried in the employment agreement, page 7, section 12. Employee agrees that all work product created during the course of employment belongs to the company. Work product. That was their argument. I'd built the infrastructure during employment, therefore it was theirs. Except, page 3, section 5. This agreement covers full-time employment at company facilities during standard business hours. Standard business hours. I pulled up my old calendars, started documenting. Every late night, every weekend, every holiday. Every time I'd worked from home at 2 in the morning fixing an emergency. Hours and hours, probably thousands of them, worked outside of standard business hours. Then I opened my credit card statements. 4 years of them. Found every AWS charge. Every single one. They'd reimbursed me, eventually. But the charges hit my personal card first. My credit line. My liability. I took screenshots of everything. Built a timeline. Then I did something else. I went through my email archives. Every message I'd ever sent from my personal email about work, every time I'd logged in from home, every time I'd used my personal computer instead of my work laptop, and I found the smoking gun, an email from year 1, me to Wallace. Wallace, we should set up a corporate AWS account and migrate everything over. Happy to handle the transition, but we should do it properly. Wallace's response? Not a priority right now. Keep it under your account for now. We'll deal with it when we have more bandwidth. I forwarded that to Mike with a note. Found this. Useful? He called me immediately. Justin, this is gold. This shows they knowingly allowed you to maintain personal ownership. This changes everything. So what now? Now? We stop negotiating. We send them a bill. A bill for consulting services, 4 years of infrastructure management, off-hours work, personal liability for their operations. I'd say $200,000 sounds fair, with a payment plan if needed. $200,000. 10 times their offer. Mike, they'll never pay that. They don't have to pay all of it, but it reframes the conversation. They're not buying your property. They're paying back wages for work they never properly compensated. Big difference legally. And the non-compete? We argue it's void because they violated the terms of employment by requiring significant off-hours work without proper compensation. California courts hate non-competes anyway. This just gives them more reason to throw it out. I felt something shift in my chest. Not quite hope, more like clarity. Do it, I said. You sure? This is going to get ugly. Wallace fired me via email. Derek used me to train my replacement. They tried to lowball me at $25,000 for infrastructure worth millions. Yeah, I'm sure. All right, I'll draft it tonight. Should go out tomorrow morning. After we hung up, I sat there in my apartment, staring at my laptop. 4 years of emails, 4 years of credit card statements, 4 years of late nights and weekends and sacrificed holidays. It was all right there. Documented, time-stamped, undeniable. They'd thought I was just a good employee who worked hard. They didn't realize I was a systems guy who documented everything. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, Mike sent the demand letter. By noon, my phone was blowing up. Wallace, Derek, Jennifer, the lawyers, even some of the engineers from Apex. I ignored all of them. At 2 p.m., I got an email from Wallace. Subject line, "Let's talk like adults." I opened it. "Justin, this has gotten out of hand. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we meet? Just you and me. No lawyers. Let's figure this out. No lawyers." Translation, "Let me pressure you without witnesses." I forwarded it to Mike without responding. He called immediately. "Don't respond. Don't meet with him. This is a trap." I know. Good. Because here's what's happening. They just realized they're screwed. That email you found, the one where Wallace told you to keep everything under your personal account, that's liability. If this goes to court, it proves they knowingly created this situation. They're trying to settle before it gets worse. So we have leverage. You have all the leverage. Question is, what do you want? What did I want? I thought about that for a long time. Money? Sure, but this was bigger than money. I want them to understand they can't treat people like this, I said. I want them to know there are consequences. Mike was quiet for a moment. Then let's make sure they feel those consequences. Thanks for sticking with me so far. If this story is hitting home, stay around. There's more to come. Thursday morning, 7 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Justin Morris? Yeah. This is David Chen, CTO at Apex. Derek's boss. We need to talk. Now. Not Derek. His boss. They were escalating. I have an attorney. All communication should... I know about the legal stuff. I'm not calling about that. I'm calling because our cloud infrastructure just went down. My stomach dropped. What? Everything. All systems offline. We're dead in the water. 200 clients can't access their data. We're losing millions by the hour. I haven't touched anything. I'm not accusing you. I'm asking for help. Emergency consulting. Name your price. We need systems back online now. I opened my laptop, checked the AWS console. He was right. Everything was red. Database failures, server timeouts, cascading errors across the entire system. What happened? I asked. Derek tried to migrate some services to a new corporate account. Something went wrong. Now nothing works and we can't figure out how to roll it back. Derek. Of course. When did this start? About an hour ago. We've been trying to fix it, but we're locked out of half the admin functions because they didn't have my credentials. They'd been trying to work around it, and they'd broken everything. I watched the error logs pile up, thousands of failed requests per minute, 4 years of work, falling apart in real time. Part of me, the engineer part, wanted to jump in and fix it, wanted to save the systems I'd built. But the other part remembered Wallace's email. Don't come back. My attorney will send over an emergency consulting agreement, I said. $10,000. Half up front. Once I receive payment, I'll start recovery. 10,000? Justin, be reasonable. That's my rate for emergency after-hours work. Take it or leave it. Silence. Then, fine, send the paperwork. I texted Mike. He had the contract ready in 20 minutes. 2 hours later, payment cleared. I logged into the AWS console and started assessing the damage. It was worse than I thought. Derek had tried to transfer ownership of critical services without understanding the dependencies. He'd broken authentication, crashed the database cluster, and somehow corrupted the backup system. Amateur hour. It took me 6 hours to get everything back online. 6 hours of rolling back changes, rebuilding indexes, and manually restarting services in the correct order. By 8 p.m., systems were stable. Clients had access again. The bleeding had stopped. I sent David a status report. Systems recovered. Root cause. Unauthorized configuration changes. Recommend immediate security audit and access control review. He called immediately. You're a lifesaver, thank you. Just doing the job. Listen, about this legal situation. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Is there any way... Talk to my attorney. I hung up. Sat there in my apartment, exhausted. I just saved their company. Fixed the disaster they'd created trying to cut me out. And they still thought they could lowball me. The next morning, I got an email from Wallace. Justin, thank you for helping with yesterday's emergency. David speaks highly of your professionalism. I think we've all learned something here. Let's put this behind us. I'm prepared to offer $75,000 for a full knowledge transfer and mutual release. Final offer. $75,000. 3 times their original offer. Still nowhere near what they owed me. I forwarded it to Mike. They're moving, he said, but they're still not serious. Want me to respond? No. I want to try something else. What? Let them sweat. I didn't respond to Wallace's email. Didn't respond to David. Didn't respond to anyone. Just watched the access logs. They were trying again. Different approach this time. Hiring more consultants, paying premium rates for emergency infrastructure help. Consultants who kept running into the same problem. They didn't own the account. Every fix was temporary. Every workaround was fragile. Because the foundation, the core infrastructure I'd built, was still mine. And it was crumbling under their inexperience. Monday, the system crashed again. Different issue. Same root cause. People making changes without understanding the architecture. They called. I didn't answer. Tuesday, another crash. More frantic calls. More missed calls. Wednesday, I got an email from their board of directors. A name I didn't recognize. Mr. Morris, we understand there's been a dispute. We'd like to resolve this professionally and fairly. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. The board. They'd escalated past Wallace, past David, straight to the top. That's when I knew. They were desperate. And desperation changes everything. If this resonates, subscribe and stay around. The karma's just getting started. The board meeting was set for Friday. Virtual. My attorney present. I spent Thursday preparing. Not nervously, methodically. I laid out everything. Every email, every timesheet, every credit card statement. 4 years of documentation showing exactly what I'd built, when I'd built it, and how much of it was on my own time. Mike reviewed it all. "This is airtight," he said. "You've got them. What's the play?" We let them make an offer. Then we counter with the real number, which is $350,000, plus full release from the non-compete, plus a written recommendation, plus they cover all legal fees. $350,000, almost 5 years of salary. They'll never pay that. They'll pay because the alternative is worse. If this goes to court, discovery will expose how they mismanaged their infrastructure, how they fired the one person who understood it, how they've had multiple outages since. That's a PR nightmare. Client lawsuits waiting to happen. They'll pay to make this go away quietly. Friday morning, I joined the video call. 5 board members: Wallace, David Chen, their legal team, my attorney. The chairman spoke first. Distinguished older guy, former CEO of some Fortune 500 company. "Mr. Morris, thank you for joining us. We've reviewed the situation and we believe there's been a breakdown in communication. We'd like to resolve this fairly." Fairly. That word again. "We're prepared to offer $150,000 for a complete transfer of infrastructure access, along with a mutual release from all claims and the non-compete agreement." $150,000. 6 times their first offer. They were moving. Fast. Mike unmuted. "Thank you for the offer. My client appreciates the movement. However, given the scope of intellectual property, the hours of uncompensated overtime, and the emergency services he's already provided, we believe fair compensation is $350,000, plus legal fees, plus a written recommendation acknowledging his contributions." Silence on the call. I could see Wallace's face on camera. He looked like he'd been punched. The chairman spoke carefully. "That's significantly higher than we anticipated." "It's significantly lower than what a court might award," Mike said, "especially once we present evidence of labor violations, breach of contract, and the ongoing operational damage caused by inadequate knowledge transfer." More silence. "We'll need to discuss this internally," the chairman said. "Can we reconvene Monday?" "Of course," Mike said. The call ended. I sat there staring at my screen. "That went well," Mike said. "You think they'll pay?" "I think they're terrified." "Did you see Wallace's face?" "He knows this is his fault. The board knows it too. They're just figuring out how to spin it." That weekend, I didn't check the logs, didn't look at the systems, didn't think about Apex at all. I updated my resume, reached out to recruiters, started interviewing, because regardless of how this ended, I was done with Apex. Monday morning, 8 a.m., my phone rang. The chairman: "Mr. Morris, we've discussed your proposal. We're prepared to offer $300,000, full release from the non-compete, written recommendation, legal fees up to $25,000, final offer, $300,000. I muted my phone and looked at Mike. He nodded. I unmuted. "Accepted. Have your legal team send over the paperwork." "Excellent. We'll have everything ready by end of day. And Mr. Morris, for what it's worth, you built something impressive. We should have recognized that sooner." Too late for that. But I didn't say it. "Thank you," I said, and hung up. The paperwork came through that afternoon. Mike reviewed everything, made a few edits, sent it back. By Wednesday, it was done. $300,000 hit my account. The non-compete was voided. My access to the AWS infrastructure was formally transferred, and I walked away. Clean, paid, free. That night, I opened a beer and sat on my balcony. 4 years, 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, burned relationships, all for a company that fired me via email. But I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed them. I hadn't. The systems were running. The company would survive. I'd won because I'd understood something they didn't. Loyalty without respect is just exploitation, and documentation is power. I'd kept every email, every receipt, every timestamp, not because I'd planned this, but because I was an engineer. Engineers document everything, and when they tried to erase me, the documentation spoke louder than any lawyer. I finished my beer and went inside. Tomorrow I had interviews, job offers coming in, a future that didn't involve working for people who didn't value me. But tonight, I just sat with the silence. The silence of knowing I'd stood up for myself. The silence of knowing I'd won. The silence of knowing they'd never forget the cost of treating people like they were disposable. What would you have done? Tell me in the comments. 3 months later, I was working at a better company, better pay, better culture, actual work-life balance. But I still followed Apex from a distance. LinkedIn, industry news, old colleagues who'd stayed in touch. The first thing I heard, Derek Chen was gone, fired 6 weeks after I left. The board had blamed him for the infrastructure disasters, for not properly assessing the transition risk, for creating the situation that cost them $300,000. He'd lasted 4 months. I didn't feel bad for him. Then I heard about the clients. Two of Apex's biggest accounts, worth about 30 million combined, had left during the outages, moved to competitors. The instability had broken their trust. Wallace had to explain that to investors, had to explain how they'd lost their senior infrastructure engineer, then lost control of their systems, then lost major clients. The Series C funding round they'd been planning? Delayed, maybe canceled. Company valuation dropped. Stock options for employees became even more worthless. I heard through a friend that morale was terrible. People were leaving. The engineering team had turned over almost completely. Nobody wanted to work somewhere that treated people like that. Then, 4 months after I left, I got a message on LinkedIn from Jennifer in HR. "Justin, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to let you know I left Apex last month. The culture changed after everything that happened. It wasn't the place I thought it was. I should have spoken up more when they let you go. I'm sorry I didn't. I hope you found something better." I wrote back, "Thanks, Jennifer. I have. Good luck with your next move." She wasn't the only one who left. Over the next 6 months, half the original team was gone. The people who remembered when Apex was small, when it felt like a mission, not just a job. They'd all seen what happened to me, seen how loyalty meant nothing, how 4 years of work could end with 2 sentences in an email, and they'd made their own calculations. Why stay somewhere that treats people as disposable? I ran into one of the junior developers at a tech meetup, kid named Ryan, good engineer. I'd mentored him during my last year. "Justin, hey, how's the new gig?" "Good, really good. You still at Apex?" He shook his head. "Left 2 months ago. Got a job at Datacore, 30% raise. Congrats." "Yeah, thanks. Honestly, after what they did to you, I started looking immediately. You built that whole infrastructure, worked insane hours, and they just cut you loose. Made me realize if they do that to you, they do it to anyone." He wasn't wrong. The last thing I heard about Wallace came from a former board member I'd met during the settlement negotiation. He reached out over coffee. "Thought you'd want to know. Wallace is out. Board voted him out last month. The whole situation with you, the infrastructure failures, the lost clients, it all added up. They brought in a new CEO. How's he taking it?" "Not well. He tried to spin it as pursuing other opportunities, but everyone knows. Word travels fast in this industry." I sipped my coffee. Didn't say anything. "For what it's worth," he continued, "you handled that whole thing with incredible professionalism. A lot of people would have burned the place down on their way out. You just stood your ground. I just wanted what was fair." "Yeah. Well, it cost them a lot more than 300,000. Probably cost them the company, long term. Reputation damage, client losses, leadership turnover. They'll recover maybe, but they'll never be what they could have been." I thought about that. About 4 years of potential. Of what Apex could have been if they'd valued people over profit. If they'd treated loyalty with loyalty, but they hadn't. And now they were learning the cost. Not because I'd destroyed them. I hadn't touched anything except what was legally mine. The destruction was all self-inflicted. They'd fired the person who understood their systems. They'd tried to lowball the person who held their infrastructure. They'd escalated instead of negotiating fairly. And every bad decision had cascaded into the next failure. That's the thing about karma. It's not magic. It's not cosmic justice. It's just consequences. Treat people badly, and eventually they stop covering for your mistakes. Cut corners, and eventually those corners cut back. Fire the person holding everything together, and eventually everything falls apart. I finished my coffee and went back to my new office. Better company, better team, better future. And behind me, somewhere in the Bay Area, Apex Solutions was still trying to rebuild what they'd broken, not the infrastructure. That was replaceable. What they'd broken was trust, and trust, once lost, costs a lot more than $300,000 to rebuild. Sometimes it can't be rebuilt at all. Sometimes a story like this is all someone needs to feel less alone. Subscribe if this hit home. 1 year later, I was sitting in my new apartment. Bigger place, better neighborhood, view of the bay. My laptop was on the coffee table. The same personal laptop I'd used to check those AWS logs in Mexico. But now it was just for personal stuff. No work emergencies, no midnight pages, no crisis management. I'd kept my promise to myself. Work stayed at work. My new company respected that, respected me. When I said I needed time off, nobody questioned it. When I worked late, it was recognized. When I built something, I got credit. Turns out that's not too much to ask. I thought about Apex sometimes, about Wallace and Derek and that email. Don't come back. I'd heard Wallace was consulting now, couldn't get another CEO position. His reputation had followed him. Derek was at some startup, mid-level role, nothing like the big CTO position he'd had. Apex had been acquired. Fire sale price. The new owners gutted the leadership team and rebuilt everything from scratch. all because they'd forgotten something simple. Companies aren't built on code or infrastructure. They're built on people, and people remember how you treat them. I picked up my phone, scrolled through messages from old colleagues, people checking in, people asking for advice, people wanting to know how I'd done it, how I'd stood up for myself, how I'd won. The answer was simpler than they thought. I'd documented everything. I'd known my worth, and when they tried to erase me, I'd proven that some things can't be erased. Not because I was special, not because I was smarter than anyone else, just because I'd paid attention, because I'd kept records, because when the moment came, I was prepared. That's the real lesson. Not about revenge, not about getting even, about knowing your value, about setting boundaries, about understanding that loyalty is a two-way street. For 4 years, I'd given everything to Apex. Nights, weekends, holidays, relationships, health, and they'd given me 2 sentences in an email. But I'd walked away with more than $300,000. I'd walked away with my dignity, my self-respect, and the knowledge that I'd never let anyone treat me like that again. My phone buzzed. Text from my girlfriend. We were meeting for dinner in an hour. She was a doctor, worked hard but had boundaries, knew how to separate work from life. She'd taught me a lot about that. I closed my laptop and grabbed my keys. On my way out, I passed my home office, saw my badge from the new company hanging on the wall. Next to it, in a frame, was something else, a printed email. Your position has been eliminated. Don't come back. I'd kept it, not out of bitterness, not as a trophy, as a reminder. A reminder that the lowest moments can become turning points, that sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen, that sometimes the people who underestimate you give you exactly the leverage you need, and that documentation, preparation, and self-respect will always beat blind loyalty. I locked the door behind me and headed out. The sun was setting over the bay. Traffic was light. I had nowhere to be except dinner with someone who actually valued my time. And somewhere in Silicon Valley, another engineer was probably working late, sacrificing everything for a company that would forget them the moment it was convenient. I hoped they'd learn what I learned, before they got that email, before they had to fight for what they'd already earned. I hoped they'd realize sooner than I did. You teach people how to treat you, and if you don't set boundaries, someone else will set them for you. The difference is, their boundaries will always benefit them, not you. So know your worth, document everything, and never ever let anyone convince you that loyalty means accepting less than you deserve. Because in the end, the only person who's going to protect your career is you. Not your boss, not your company, not your colleagues, you. And that's not cynical. That's just reality. The good news? Once you accept that reality, you stop being a victim. You become strategic. You become powerful. You become someone who can't be easily discarded. And when they try, you're ready. I got in my car and drove toward the city, toward dinner, toward a life that was actually mine. Behind me, the sun set on Silicon Valley. And somewhere in that valley, in an office building I'd never enter again, Apex Solutions was still running, on infrastructure someone else had built, with people who'd learned to protect themselves first. Because that's what happens when you treat people like they're disposable. Eventually, they learn. And then, they teach everyone else. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. If this story hit home, subscribe and stay around. Sometimes a story like this is all someone needs to feel less alone.